first of all, what's the RCN's top priority for this year?
Well, there are a number, there's not just one, and not necessarily in order of priority, but the most pressing thing is to get the government and others involved to understand that there really have been cuts in the number of nurses in wards and in other settings, and that it's one of the reasons why in some areas we've got huge problems with the standard of care. And all of the research demonstrates that if you just don't have enough staff on wards and in departments, little wonder at times the standard of care is compromised. Now there's an ongoing debate and a dialogue about that. The government are quick to push it back and say, well, it's not just about numbers. Well, of course we know it's not just about numbers. And just to make it absolutely explicit, from time to time there are individuals, nurses who behave in a way that they ought not to, right? And we're not going to defend that. But most of the time when there are problems, you will find that people are over-pressurised and understaffed. So that's something which we're really going to push. Another priority, and it's not just about money for nurses, but we are appalled that the government have chosen to disregard the recommendations of the Independent Pay Review Body. Mm-hmm. You know, a 1% pay rise is not very much. Relative to the £120 billion budget, this was affordable. And this government has chosen to disregard that and to say to nurses and our colleagues in other disciplines, you've got to endure another year of a pay freeze. It's wholly unacceptable.
At the RCN Summit in March on the role of primary care nursing, it was suggested that the university should be doing more to raise the profile of primary care nursing as a career option, largely through more and better placements in primary care. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Look, we know that the critical mass of nurses will still be working, particularly in the acute hospital sector. But primary care has been hugely underinvested over the years. And we know that with the changing face of healthcare, if you invest more in primary care, you'll do a whole range of things. First of all, you'll ameliorate the pressure on acute hospitals because you'll keep people well and out of hospital. Secondly, you'll get more upstream with helping to manage people who've got potential health problems to stay healthy. So it's not only good clinically, but it's good financially. It's good for the patient, but also good for the bank balance. At some stage, the government of the day, with the nursing leadership of the day, and with others who are acutely involved, there's going to have to be a wake-up call that this cannot go on. I mean, we've been hugely encouraged. I've already mentioned Sir Bruce Keogh, Steve Field. You couldn't get a bigger advocate for primary nursing than Steve Field. And we hope in time their political masters will come to terms with the fact that they're being given the right advice, and what they have to do is to steer employers and the way in which the health service works in order to get that investment which is so badly needed.
Thank you. Does the RCN support the RCGP's general practice nursing group's drive to draw nurses into general practice nursing by establishing a formalised qualification and career pathway for them?
Well, we work closely with the RCGP, had a great relationship with Claire Gerada, and building a very good relationship, and I'm sure it will be a great relationship with Maureen Baker. I think the fact that the RCGP are taking such an interest in nursing really signals that they understand that the idea of, I guess if you went back some years, a lot of practice nurses were people that had worked in hospitals, perhaps had a family, want to work a few hours a week, and they worked in a practice, and that was in the early days, and I can understand how that happened. Now what you need is much more rigour behind it. You do need formalised qualifications, and that's why we will be working closely with them. But what we also need is the leadership in the 4 countries of the United Kingdom to champion this, and what we also need is to get the NMC on board.
So the government agenda will see more and more care moved into the community. What's the RCN doing to raise the value as well as the profile of primary care nurses with the public? who I think do tend to think that nurses work in hospitals.
Well, again, getting that message across to the public, it tends to be quite difficult. The public tend to engage when either they themselves or one of their relatives has got an illness or a condition. But I would say this in relation to what is increasingly becoming the sort of the parents is, more care in the community and so on. Fine. But care in the community costs.
How can we get from needing an increase in funding to actually getting more nurses on the ground in the community?
Well, this government, one of its techniques, not just in relation to health but in other areas, has been to have inquiries. They have a problem with the press, Levinson. Problem with Iraq, let's have an inquiry into that, and it goes so on. Now, at some stage, we've had all these inquiries into health, we've seen the recommendations, what we've had so far is a lot of fine words. At some stage, we want to see these recommendations implemented. The 290 recommendations from the Francis inquiry, to date, very little has been implemented. Now, the government would say, well, it's, we had to take time to consider it, which I think was fair enough. But this is what I would predict. If you come back and interview me in 2 or 3 years' time, whether it be the Francis inquiry or Keogh or Berwick, what will happen, in my view, is the soft recommendations will be implemented, but the hard-edged ones, the ones that need resources, they'll go into the long grass. So people are very happy to say things like, yes, under Francis, he talked about a culture change. We've got to change the culture. Fine, I don't have a problem with that. But what about the recommendations when Robert Francis talks about developing evidence-based metrics in order to ensure there's the right level of staffing? That's what we want to see implemented. These are the things that the government should do.
What do you think is the one key thing that the RCN can do to support practice nurses? Not practice nurses, nurses in primary care.
Okay. I actually think historically we have done a lot of good stuff and we get a lot of good feedback with that, but we can do more. We've got to get our primary care advisor in post. We've got to do more to highlight the incredible contribution they make. But also, people have got to look at what is happening with society. More and more people are living longer than ever, but many of those people are not necessarily living longer, healthier. Many of those people access healthcare via primary care. It's a pretty obvious thing to say. And what we're going to need is more of these people, more of them highly skilled. Now's the time to do it. The nursing workforce is an ageing workforce. Over 200,000 nurses are going to retire in the next 2 years. And what we can't do is try to plan this health service by relying on what historically the health service has done. When the chips are down, they go off to developing countries and they raid their already stretched nursing workforce. Now, I don't have a problem with anybody from who want to come to the UK. That is not a problem for me. That's no way to run a health service.